that an American will hold the record. 1 year later, Lee Bible tries to better Keach's mark, also in the triplex, losing his life in the attempt. Frank Lockhart, the third young American, loops the loop in his lightweight Black Hawk and dies instantly. Less than 2 years later, Ray Keach himself is killed in an auto race. The United States pay a heavy toll in their quest for the record. Back in Great Britain, Seagrave introduces the Irving Golden Arrow. In March 1929, he regains the record with an improvement on Keach's mark of nearly 24 miles per hour. A new face appears on the scene at this time, Englishman Kay Don.
During the seasons of 1927-28, I've had various successes with my Sunbeam Tiger. It won a great number of races. In addition to that, world records and British records. And I thought perhaps it would be an idea to have a car built to make an attempt on the world speed record.
He calls the car the Silver Bullet. It is advanced in design with a low streamline body shell, plus an ice tank to cool the engines. It is the first car completely built from scratch to attempt the record. Don and the Bullet arrive at Daytona Beach in March 1930.
The whole thing was pretty unfortunate. The situation in regard to the Silver Bullet was that we were very rushed for time to complete the car, and the supercharger which was designed for the engines had not been fitted when we got to Daytona. And on our first experimental run with supercharger fitted, we ran into difficulties. The car was originally designed for 400 miles an hour top speed, and an attempt was made, and the car was timed over the measured miles. The maximum speed attained was 180 miles an hour. Lack of cash was the real reason why I had to stop.
Seagrave, now knighted Sir Henry, turns to water. On June 13th, he streaks across England's Lake Windermere in his craft Miss England II, becoming airborne at 100 miles per hour. The boat sinks. Seagrave survives but is badly injured. 2 hours later, he dies. 1931, and for the next 4 years, Malcolm Campbell is to reign unchallenged.
We've just completed our first test. We were only able to have a run of about 3.5 miles, which is insufficient to pick up maximum speed, but we reached a speed of about 200. I'm quite satisfied with that first run.
With his 6 principal challengers dead, and with Kay Don turning successfully to the water speed record, Campbell gets progressively faster.
See that dot way up there on the beach? That's Campbell, and here he comes at 240 miles an hour.
Well, I'm sure proud of all my mechanics that helped me to register this speed today on the old Bluebird of 245 miles an hour. If it hadn't been for all their good work, well, I don't think we should have got there at all.
There goes Campbell, moving like a meteor across the sands at over 250 miles an hour. Malcolm Campbell on his way to a new world land speed record of 276.88 miles an hour.
Salt Lake City, a metropolis located on the dried-up bed of Lake Bonneville. 120 miles to the west, near the Utah-Nevada border, there's a salt-bodied 200 square miles in area, the desolate Bonneville Salt Flats. This lonely arena will be the setting for the recently knighted Sir Malcolm Campbell's last and greatest achievement on land before turning to the water speed record. It is September 1935. The famous Bluebird racer is introduced to the salt.
Sir Malcolm hopes to be the first man to achieve a speed of 300 miles per hour. And now he's off for the run which is to justify his hopes of a tremendous performance from this British-built speed monster. There he goes, hurtling along in a small cloud of salt thrown up by the road wheels, which are doing something like 3,000 revolutions a minute.
Campbell is timed at 299.9 miles per hour, a new record, but not the 300 mark he was so desperately keen to attain.
Well, it wasn't until late that evening we were having dinner in the hotel, and Sir Malcolm was very, very depressed by the whole fact. So the timekeeper present said they were terribly sorry, They had made a mistake with the timing, and in fact he had covered the record. It was now 301 officially. So Malcolm just blew off steam, exasperated. He said, "You ruined the whole damn thing for me." He said, "This one particular effort, the last in my life, is record breaking. You've killed it, stone dead."
And so Campbell has started by breaking 150 miles per hour in 1925 and ended by breaking 300 miles per hour in 1935. He is one of the few speed kings not to be killed in an attempt. After considerable success on water, he will die in his sleep on New Year's Eve, 1948. His son Donald will continue record breaking in the Campbell tradition. Two famed English drivers fill the void left by Campbell, George Easton and John Cobb, men obsessed with attaining 400 miles per hour on land. Easton designs an 8-wheeled speed monster known as Thunderbolt, and through sheer horsepower and determination, lifts the record to new heights on 3 separate occasions. By the close of 1938, the land speed record stands at 357, and for Easton, it's the summit of his career. John Cobb is the record breaker's record breaker. If he had entered the land speed race in any age, he would have been successful. His achievements at Bonneville in 1947 are to stand supreme for almost 16 years. His Railton Mobile Special is of such advanced design that today's record for wheel-driven vehicles has only fractionally increased in over 2 decades.
Your time on the south run, your first one, was 385.645 for the mile and 388.019 for the kilo. On your run back, you made your 400 miles an hour on that one run.
I was on a launch for refueling in case...
30 miles per hour, and Cobb dies instantly, leaving the world to mourn one of the truly... is the first to attempt the record that year. However, Graham's challenge ends in disaster when his car flips over, crushing him inside the cockpit and scatters across the salt. He dies on his way to the hospital. That same year, 1960, Donald Campbell, son of Sir Malcolm, arrives at Bonneville with his much-publicized multi-million-dollar Bluebird. The attempt is immediately open to criticism because of its extravagance.
It was quite a show. He was the only one that used the hangars over there for his car, but he had to. He had so many wheels there, he couldn't keep them outside.
Didn't know his equipment too well. I thought he should know it a little bit better.
Don Campbell went up the far end of the salt, along with his trucks, fire trucks, and I don't know how many rovers he had, and he went up one end and down the other end. It just looked like the Indy Parade to start with.
On his first run, why, he started to move out, and he drove down the course about 50 or 60 yards, and all at once he stopped and got up, and they had a red light in the dashboard, which I believe was his emergency brake, and he'd forgotten to release it, but he didn't know what it was, and he had to ask one of his chief people.
He should have probably taken some trials at a slower speed and maybe worked up.
And I was pretty sure the car was going to fly anyway, because I didn't think the aerodynamics was proper.
From the very beginning, the pressure was on Campbell to prove his American critics wrong. On September 16th, 1960, he goes out for a fast one.
Yeah, Ken Norris, the designer myself, followed Donald in a Rover car, fairly fast, and Donald was disappearing away in the distance, when all of a sudden we noticed some blue pieces flying about mid-air. I says to Ken, "By God, Ken, Donald's in trouble." We arrived on the scene, then he was still screaming his heart out. We managed to raise the canopy. Donald was still sitting inside, streaming with blood down his face. He was expressionless look on his face, but he was still conscious.
It is an extremely bad accident. Bluebird is an almost total write-off, but Campbell lives through a 300-mile-per-hour flip, roll, and slide that takes him 700 yards across the salt. He will try for the record again. Unquestionably, the pressure on Campbell was largely due to the presence at Bonneville of Californian Mickey Thompson, who only days before the Bluebird accident drives his small homemade Challenger 1 racer to a one-way speed of 406, narrowly missing the record on his second run because of mechanical failure. Thompson's whole approach to record-breaking revolves around a small but close-knit operation with only a handful of helpers and mechanics working on a very limited budget. The fact that he so nearly takes the record proves highly embarrassing to the enormous Bluebird camp, and it was on Campbell to quickly justify the vast expense of his enormous enterprise. One of the first jet turbine vehicles to attempt the record is that of Dr. Nathan Ostich, a practicing Los Angeles physician who, although unsuccessful with his flying caduceus, does pave the way for a new breed of record breaker, the American hot rodder. 3 such Americans make their mark at Bonneville in 1962. 2 are to become international celebrities and to stage the greatest duels ever witnessed in the history of the land speed race. But the 3rd is to die tragically. That summer, Art Arfons and his Green Monster are just starting an incredible run of success which will lead to world acclaim by 1965. Craig Breedlove, Arfons' rival, makes his debut that year with Spirit of America. He will be the first man to break 400, 500, and 600 miles per hour on land. 26-year-old Glenn Leisure, with his jet-powered Infinity, is the last to run at Bonneville in 1962. His friend and the principal timing official on the salt flats throughout the 1960s, Joe Petralli.
He was a young boy from Northern California and came out there, and this is the first straight jet car we were to run. It had no tail on it. It had no stabilizer or anything. It was just a streamlined bullet, and he sat in the front end of it. These front end cars are very hard to tell what the back end is doing. You're sitting so far forward. In this case, he got all ready, and I told him at first, when I first talked with him, that he better take a few runs at the thing at a slow speed and get used and bring it up. But when he went down to get time, and to me, he was actually one of the boys that could do it. I always liked Glenn. He was a very brave boy. I talked to him that morning, and I've always said that the fella just didn't have a fear in the world, and this is probably the reason why he decided to do what he did. I've always said that the boy died like a man because he had no fear. He had absolutely no fear.
Craig Breedlove, a young man in a hurry, dreams of breaking the land speed record when still only 10. That was the year John Cobb set the record that was to stand for so long. At 14, he builds his first car. At 16, he starts racing the cars that he's built. It is quite apparent that Breedlove is more than just another daredevil hot rodder without fear. Where Glenn Leisure would go for broke on the very first run, young Breedlove works up to a fast speed and snatches the winner's laurels on the line. He is to prove a brilliant designer, initiator, constructor, and above all, driver. By 1965, Breedlove will surpass even John Cobb's achievements. At 22, he sets about designing his own land speed record turbojet vehicle. By working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, his dream, now an obsession, takes shape. He persuades Goodyear and Shell to back him, and is then able to give up his job and concentrate full time on preparing the 3-wheel vehicle. It is completed in 1962. But the car is a big disappointment that year. So during the winter of 1963, a tail fin is added, and other improvements to the handling of the car are carried out. On the morning of August 5th, 1963, Breedlove goes after the record. The temperature is in the early 70s. The air is remarkably calm. 400 miles per hour, and Cobb's record are about to be broken.
The 400 was a fantastic thing because this was really the first success that I had ever experienced. And with that particular barrier, it was like the elusive record of Cobb. It was almost unbelievable that we'd finally made it. I almost was beginning to think that there was a jinx about it. Then I went and put my foot in my mouth, and I told everybody I was going to break 500 the following year. And this was largely because I had a lot of criticism from the press.
407.45 miles per hour. The unlimited class record comes back to the United States for the first time since 1928. Meanwhile, Donald Campbell, now fully recovered from his Bonneville accident, decides to make his next attempt with Bluebird at Lake Eyre, a dried-up salt bed in Australia. He arranges to have built a commune village to house his vast crew around a sheep-shearing station called Malorina. The Australian government also agreed to lend considerable aid towards the attempt and to build a causeway onto the dried-up lake surface. After reportedly another $1 million is spent in preparation, the Campbell Bluebird convoy arrives. 2 months later, the attempt is called off because of floods. Once back in England, Campbell talks of returning for one last try.
We're aiming to better the unofficial record of 407 miles an hour set up by Craig Breedlove in the jet car at Utah last year.
What sort of conditions are you going to see there? Are they going to be really first class?
Well, this is going to depend entirely on the weather. We started preparing a new track last October. We've spent a great deal of money on it. It's now 19 miles long and 400 yards wide, and at this time, no better track has ever existed.
In February 1964, Campbell returns to Lake Eyre with a greatly reduced staff and funds because of the withdrawal of his main sponsor. However, 6 months later, things are still not quite right for him.
Everything is really going to depend, A, on that track, and B, a continuation of this fine weather and calm air. Yesterday we were cutting ruts which were up to 2 inches deep, and we were down to the water table, and this is like trying to drive a car with the brake on. Given half a decent course, that record would have been through the roof. But our problem at the moment is that track, period. Heartbreak is the word for it. In fact, the whole course is like a rice pudding.
Then on July 17th, 1964, Donald Campbell goes out for one last desperate try. He manages 4:03, faster than Cobb, but slower than Breedlove. And the cost of 8 frustrating years, $5 million. Art Arfons from Akron, Ohio, builds cars to go fast, faster than anyone else. He is referred to by many as the junkyard genius of the jet set. After going to one of the early drag meets, Arfons is bitten by the bug of unlimited speed and decides to build a car to outpace them all. And so the first green monsters appear on the scene. He builds over a dozen from junked engines salvaged from scrap dealers. The green monsters get progressively more powerful until he puts a J-79 turbine from a Starfighter jet plane into his latest monster, which is to prove devastatingly successful on the salt flats at Bonneville. But in 1964, it's Walt Arfons, Art's brother, who also builds fast cars, who first betters Breedlove's mark of 407. With his jet-powered Wingfoot Express, piloted by Tom Green, he steers to a new record of 413. But Walt's mark is only to stand for 3 days. Art arrives on the salt and opens the enormous turbojet of his green monster to full tune and lifts the record into the 430s. Not to be outdone, Craig Breedlove rides his 3-wheeled Spirit of America to a 468 average both ways. 2 days later, he goes out again and becomes the first man on wheels to smash 500 miles per hour, but only after that incredible run that takes him out of control across the salt wastes of Bonneville and into an 18-foot brine lake on the edge of the flats. Art Arfons has the final say for 1964, a 2-way average of 536.71 miles per hour. From December through August, the floods come to the 200 square miles of snow-white salt flats at Bonneville, and they rest from the screaming whine of the turbines and kerosene fumes. Between September and November, the sun shines and the salt hardens to a concrete-like surface, and that's when the men and their machines will return. Meanwhile, Breedlove builds a new Spirit of America to be known as Sonic One, this time a 4-wheeled speed tube resembling an airliner fuselage. Newcomers Bob and Bill Summers put the finishing touches to their goldenrod. Art Arfons makes improvements to his green monster. And Brother Walt aims to outrun everybody with the most experimental and ambitious machine of them all, a rocket version of the Wingfoot Express.
Well, I've been toying with rockets for quite some time, and of course, pioneering something is nothing but experimental and getting out and trying to do it. So when a person thinks of rocket power, he thinks of just power that's just unreal, you know, it'll just take you any place, just like shooting up into space. So the car handled beautifully. It was designed as the shape of an arrow, I always kept this in mind when I was building fast cars, that you shoot an arrow into the air, while what keeps the back in the back is the feathers. So your resistance has to be in the rear, which lets your front slide through easy.
On September 22nd, 1965, the 4-ton Wingfoot Express rolls onto the salt for its first test runs. It is designed to break the sound barrier, but Walt's main goal early in the 1965 season is simply to snatch back his brother's unlimited class record. The power source of the Express, solid-fuel JATO rockets, giving 2,500 pounds of thrust. For driver Bob Tatro, this is his first land speed record attempt.
It's hard to explain what a ride that speed is. You try to explain to somebody like what chocolate pie tastes like, and it tastes like chocolate, but what does chocolate taste like? There's no word. It's the greatest sensation in the world. There is nothing. No trees, no bushes, no, fence posts or anything going by. So your speed, you know in your head and by your airspeed gauge, is fast, but you have no way to transfer it through your mind like you would going down a highway. Rocket power, there's no air intake. The minute they're running their full power. Our JATO bottles, as they call them, fired their full power within 5 milliseconds of when you flipped.
And over $80,000 on fueling the rocket boosters. He never returns to the salt. Just a week passes, and Craig Breedlove returns with Spirit of America Sonic 1. Few experts feel this car is of record-breaking potential, and the first runs seem to prove them right. Corrugated ribs appear in the shell caused by a fault in the body design. Following a reconstructed fluted top body panel and other improvements, Sonic 1 makes a new attempt. At first, the run looks good. Then as Breedlove accelerates into the 600s, the front of the car becomes airborne. His main parachute rips off, and Breedlove, for the second time in his young life, is streaking across Bonneville out of control. He tries his safety chute, but it shears off, as in his 1964 run. He is careening out of control, heading towards the edge of the salt and certain disaster. He narrowly misses the telephone poles on the edge of the flats. It's a replica of that incredible ride 2 years earlier. By remaining cool and collected, he slows the car on the rough, slushy salt, but he almost runs out of road. As only Breedlove could, days later, with further modifications to the car, he lifts Art Arfond's record to 555.48 miles per hour. Arfond hears the news while he is in Las Vegas. Within 24 hours, he's on his way to Bonneville, and within the week has the record back again, adding over 20 miles an hour to Breedlove's mark.
We were standing by. That's why we were in Vegas. We had booked the following week on the salt, so we were just waiting to see what he was going to do. And when he broke the record, we loaded up that night and was back on our way to Bonneville.
The next to arrive on the salt flats are the Summers brothers and their goldenrod. Bob, the driver, is aiming to better Donald Campbell's mark for wheel-driven vehicles set the year before at Lake Air. Theirs is to be one of the most admirable achievements in the history of the land speed race, but one that is to receive little publicity.
Well, I've always been quite optimistic about things. Every time that we took the car out, I don't have a feeling of, well, it can be done today or it can't be done today. I just have the feeling that it has to be done. On that particular morning, we always got up quite early. We'd get up, 4 o'clock in the morning, and by the time we get out there, it would be 5:30, and it was very overcast. We knew that there was going to be rain today, and we knew that if we were going to do this, we had to do it quickly. We started the car up, everything worked fine, and I had always experienced a problem with the windshield fogging up, and there would be times when I'd have to take one hand off the steering wheel and wipe the window off to be sure I could see where I was going, and it was a little disturbing at times. You're doing 400 miles an hour, and you've got to lift one hand off the steering wheel and wipe the windshield off. We just got through in time, and I came to a stop and suddenly the rain came down, just as if the good Lord held the rain until we got through the mile.
A new wheel-driven land speed record of 409 miles per hour, and hardly anyone knew about it. Because less than 75 hours later, a new barrier is to be broken which captures the attention of the world press and leaves Bob and Bill Summers in the shade. 3 days later, on November 14th, 1965, Craig Breedlove returns with Spirit of America Sonic 1 and becomes the first man on wheels to drive at 600 miles per hour.
Well, when I got the slip from Joe Petrelli and I read it, it said 600.601, and the only thing I could think of immediately was that the average speed, or was that my last run? Of course, it was the last run I was under the 600, and when I found out it was the average, I just looked at it, and the thing that went through me immediately was, boy, 600 is one hell of a lot better than going 599, and I was just elated from that.
At the end of 1965, dashing young Craig Breedlove is the talk of America. He becomes rich and famous almost overnight and tours the world as the successful all-American speedster. 5 years later, he is broke through bad business ventures, separated from his third wife and 5 children, and is desperately trying to raise finance for a new rocket-powered land speed record vehicle. Only the future will tell if Craig Breedlove will pick up the threads of his broken life.
When I first started, I think one of my big problems was I was just really young. I was 22 years old at the time, and this was really hard to get people to have confidence in me. I had relatively limited background, and of course, finally we were successful. I was the first over 400, 500, and 600 miles an hour on land, and also became the first man to simultaneously hold both the world motorcycle and automobile speed record. And it's just a little hard to believe when you're in this position and have been successful. It seems as though people try to knock you in just about every way they can to sort of belittle the accomplishment, and really all we wanted to do was to achieve a lot, and I guess we really don't care too much what people think. I think the proof is in the pudding.
1966, Art Arfons returns to the Salt Flats, a lone challenger for the toughest ride of his life. Shortly after dawn on November 17th, the Green Monster...
Can't give you all the details. I slept most of the time. The car almost cleared the measured mile, and I lost a spindle. The bearing froze up from lack of lubrication, and a wheel spindle and all came off. And the car dug in and flipped for 527 feet they measured before it hit again, and most of the car slid about a mile. And after it hit the first time, I don't remember nothing else. I come to a little bit when it was getting me out, and I'd go back out, just drifting in and out of consciousness. They started washing my eyes. It was packed with salt. When I got in, they flew me into the hospital, and they was doing it with Q-tips, and my face was cut up, and they was washing all this salt out, and boy, it stung like the devil. So I said, just let me get in the shower, and I'll wash it out in the shower.
They called me from the hospital. They said, it's unbelievable, he's in taking a shower. And I said, well, if he can take a shower, he can call me on the phone. I
believe I was in the hospital a day and a half, and I flew right back to Akron, and within a week I was back down to shop.
The Green Monster is scattered over a 4-mile area, but almost Arfons talks of a new car and attempt.
I really don't know what drives me to Bonneville. It's a place that when you're out there, you can't stand it, you wish you hadn't come. And every time I left on the way home, I was making plans when I was going back. It's something you just can't get away from.
What of the future? Art Arfons has a revolutionary new Green Monster turbojet vehicle in the testing stages, ready to pounce on Breedlove's unlimited record. Californian Mickey Thompson is hoping to improve upon the Summers Brothers' wheel-driven record with his piston-engine Ford Autolite Special, the same car in which he nearly broke the record in a 1968 attempt. A highly advanced new rocket-powered vehicle called the Blue Flame, fueled by liquefied natural gas, is being made ready with a former test astronaut, Gary Gabelich, as pilot. And a whole flock of advanced jet turbine machinery is on the drawing boards and in the design stages. Some say that spending millions of dollars and risking human life chasing invisible numbers in desolate places is as pointless as putting men on the moon. But man has always accepted the challenge if it's there to be accepted. Cars raced airplanes in the 1930s. With this area on land now within reach, a new age of record breaking has arrived. Art Arfons, in practice for his attempt on the sound barrier, is now reaching speeds in excess of 300 miles per hour in less than 6 seconds from a standing start. In theory, his green monster could reach 1,000 miles per hour with suitable tires and the right course. The cars may have changed in the last 70 years, but the spirit and goals of the drivers are exactly the same. There will always be someone whose aim it is to drive cars fast into the unknown. Someone who wants to be the fastest man on Earth.